Thank you for joining us today for a Bible study message brought to you by Apostle Colis, founder of WOW Ministries. Let's listen in for today's message.
Greetings, people of God. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to another Bible study. So today I want to do something a little bit different, and that is we're going to stick with the Word of God, and I'm going to kind of show the Lord has really revealed something to me, and that is concerning bad relationships. So we're going to look at Mark chapter 5. Starting at verse 2, and it says, "And when he came out of the ship," him being Jesus, when he came out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. And it says that, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains. No, so today's vernacular, in today's understanding, that no matter handcuffs, government issue handcuffs, could not keep him contained. Then it says that because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains have been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken to pieces, neither could any man tame him, which means in the understanding that there was no governing authority. He was lawless, man. And if we're honest, we know individuals that are lawless, and they don't stay within the confinements of the lines. They pay outside of the lines, right? And it says, and always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. But when Jesus saw him afar off, he ran and worshipped him, and cried with a loud voice and said, "What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of Man, of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not." So even in this state that he was in, this mental state that he was in, he knew, recognized, it was revealed to him who Jesus was and the authority that Jesus carried, even though Jesus was afar off. He had a presence of mind in this distorted state to go to run to him and worship him, man. And it says, verse 8, it says, "For he said unto him, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. And he asked him, What is thy name? And he answered, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many." Now, the name Legion would suggest that there was anywhere between 1,200 all the way up to 6,000 foot soldiers. So there could have been anywhere between 1,200 to 6,000 demons that had infiltrated this man. And he besought him how much that he would not send him away out of the country. Now we need to understand that there are certain demons that sit over territories. They sit over regions, and they rule that region, man. So if you look like in the inner city communities, a lot of times there's the spirit of poverty. It kind of just sits over that region. There's a spirit of addiction that sits over that region, or spirit of lawlessness that just kind of sits over a particular city, over a particular region, or even a particular county. Then you move to maybe a white suburban neighborhood, where there's a spirit of pride, um, or financial gain, they'll do whatever it takes in order to get money to come into them, to maintain the status quo, right? Um, and it says that in verse 11, it says, "Now there was there nigh unto the mountains a great herd of swine feeding. And all of the devils besought him, saying, Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And forthwith Jesus gave them leave, gave them permission, and the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down into the steep place, into the sea. They were about 2,000 that ran into the sea and were choked in the sea. So the swine died, but the spirit was released into the sea. So now we get another understanding of occupants, demonic occupants that are associated with water. All right. And so verse 14, it says, And they that fed in the swine fled and told it in the city and in the country. And they went out to see what it was that had been done, that was done. And they come to Jesus and see him. They was possessed with the devil and had the legion sitting and clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And they that saw it told them how it befell to him that was possessed with the devil, and he also concerning the swine. And they began to pray him to depart out of the coast. They wanted Jesus to leave this area. And when they come into the ship, he that had been possessed with the devils prayed him that he might be with him. Howbeit Jesus suffered him not, but saith unto him, Go home to thy friends, and tell them how great things the Lord had done for thee, and have had compassion on thee. And he departed and began to publish in Decapolis how great things Jesus had done for him. And all of the men marveled. Now, so I kind of wanted to share that we see that this individual, this man, that he at one time, he had friends, he had family, he had loved ones. So then the question is, what makes an individual may have had houses and cars, friends, those that depended on him, those that he depended upon? What makes a totally functional, asset to society individual move to a deserted area and abandon everything that he knows, everything that makes sense to him, to move out of the country into a place of isolation, and starts crying and cutting himself? And that that the revelation to that is bad relationships. So we understand that the tomb represents death and isolation and separation from community, a place God never intended the living to dwell. Unclean spirits are drawn to dead spaces, emotionally dead and spiritually dead, relationally dead. You can be emotionally unavailable when you are drawn towards dead things. When you're comfortable living amongst things that don't grow, that don't thrive, there could be something that's going on demonically. Um, Isolation is a strategy, not a symptom. If you look at verse 3 through 4, it says that he lived alone. No one could bind him, no, not with chains. Relationships fail because of resistance. When you become resistant to anything that's trying to maintain you, that's for your good, anything, there is a demonic presence where there is resistance towards love, your loved ones, or even the love of God. Um, Isolation is often the first evidence of spiritual bondage. Healthy people pursue connection. We were created. We were created for community. Unclean spirits drive separation. When an individual have unclean spirits, their overall persona will keep individuals at bay. They're just, they'll be negative, and people won't want to be bothered with them. It creates, the unclean spirit creates separation. And so in unclean spirits, if the relationship is consistently pulling you into a place of isolation from God and community and even accountability, then there's a demonic spirit present. And the Bible says in verse 3 that no man could tame him. You can't be healed where you're called, you cannot heal what you're called to discern. Trying to maintain a relationship with someone under an unclean influence will drain you of your peace. It will exhaust you emotionally. And it will pull you into a cycle of places instead of allowing you to experience growth. It'll just pull you into a revolving cycle, an emotional roller coaster, but no growth. Compassion without authority leads to burnout. You will burn an individual out that's trying to hold on, trying to stay connected, while the other individual with the unclean spirit, it will be such a drain to try to overly be compassionate, overly empathize, overly show sympathy, overly always giving out of your bank account. You will not only financially, but you will drain your spiritual bank account. Your emotional bank account will be overdrawn, right? So then the missing ingredient is that In Mark 5:6-7, the region had people, the region had restraints, the region lacked authority. There was no authority in that region. Notice when Jesus came, the man, he bowed, he worshiped authority. Wherever there is a void in of the presence of God, then the unclean spirit has reign to run buckshot in every area of that land, over that area. And the thing about it is, we have to understand that we're not called as a believer, we're not assigned to every battle. And when it comes to deliverance, it requires authority, it requires an assignment, and it requires being in right alignment. Um, you can't join in and go back and forth with an unclean spirit. You can't. You can't argue out the enemy. The enemy has to be cast out. And to be honest, if you don't have the power, the authority to cast it out, you don't have the wisdom to step back. You do have the wisdom to step back. Because if not, it will drain you of your own peace. In Mark 5:5, it says that he was crying and cutting himself with stones. And so emotional pain manifests physically. So individuals that cut themselves, they're manifesting in the physical realm what's going on in their emotions. Is manifesting through them cutting themselves. And then the self-harm becomes the outlet. Whereas the blood starts to be a space of relief, right? So, what causes a grown man to leave society, right? To live in a cemetery, to cut his own flesh, cry under self-inflicted pain. It's not that someone else cut them, but they're cutting themselves. And it comes from the emotional trauma of being around people, family and friends that you once held at a high regard are now, they've turned their back on you. And it's caused you to feel like, you know what, at best, if I cut myself, it'll hopefully stop the pain from that I'm experiencing from them. Um, unclean spirits, they will distort your identity. They will feed on the torment that you're experiencing. And unclean spirits, they will normalize destruction. Have you ever been in a relationship that just had destructive tendencies? Their words were destructive. They had their understanding was destructive. Instead of trying to build bridges, they would rather send over a bomb and blow the whole bridge up. They're just destructive. They'll go from job to job, place to place, almost living like a nomad, like a vagabond. And the only thing and because you're in a relationship with them, you may even be married to them, and you're experiencing the backlash of being in a relationship with individuals with a destructive behavior. Is because there is a demonic entity, the unclean spirit, and it needs to be cast out. It shows up in toxic relationships, emotional validity, you know, they're so volatile with their emotions. They have the high highs and the low lows. They're just up and down, and at any given moment, because of they're so destructive, you don't know which version of them you're going to experience. They live in cycles of self sabotage. And because you're connected with them, you're experiencing this self sabotage. They're almost attracted to chaos. They're attracted to clutter. They're attracted to, anything that goes against anything that makes sense, right? Anything that's the opposite of peace, they're attracted to. They're resistance. They're resistant to help, but they're addicted to sympathy. It's always the woe is me. Life is unfair. My job is unfair. The people, they're unfair. My family, they treat me unfair. It's always woe is me type of syndrome. And so if you know anyone that's experiencing anything similar to this, it is a spirit that is unclean and is manifesting in the ways of bad relationships and the toxicity of being connected with them. So we have to, as a believer, we have to know our role. Notice Jesus never counseled him. He never managed him, but he did deliver him. That was so good. I think I'm gonna say it again. He never managed him. He never counseled him, but he did deliver him. So here it is. So some relationships, they don't need maintenance. They need deliverance. And if you're not authorized for the deliverance, then you're not obligated to stay in the relationship. And I'm talking about, like, it could be a childhood friend that you're trying to maintain the nature of the relationship because you grew up together, you've known them since forever. They spent time with you, birthday parties, all of that, right? But if you're not authorized for their deliverance, then you're not obligated to stay, right? You're not unloving for walking away from what is, you're not empowered to heal. Even Jesus didn't cast out demons without authority, and neither should you try to love one into submission. So we have to understand our place in their life, and we have to understand the authority that we carry. We have to understand the weight of what it is that's going on. We have to use discernment in that moment. And we have to understand also that we're not called to help everyone. There's some individuals that are just not their season, and you're just not called to help that particular one. The Bible teaches us, it says that one plants, another one waters, but God gives the increase. So you don't know what part of role that you've played up until this point in their life. You may never see them get delivered, but God may have a set point, appointed individual that's going to meet them. And that's why we have to pray. The Lord of the harvest will meet them right where they're at, because they may be outside of your reach, outside of your grasp. because of the nature of the relationship. They may not respond to your voice. And you know what? You have to cut ties and say, you know what? It's okay. It's okay. I trust God, and at this point, I'm going to leave it in the hands of a loving God. All right. I pray that blesses you. You guys be encouraged, and we will speak later. Peace.